Hey y'all, it's me, Queen J, back with another episode of season 3 of the Let's Get Uncomfortable podcast. I can't even believe that I'm saying that we're in season 3, but we're in season 3 and I got some guests for you guys. I got some interviews for you guys. But as always, we always start with a bit of mindfulness before we get into today's topic or anything like that. That is never changing. So, but I do want to introduce my lovely guest first, just because she's right there. And I'm really excited. So, everyone, warriors, this is Judith Belmont, the author behind 110 CBT Tips and Tools. We will get into it. Okay, this ain't me getting into the topic. I'm not doing that yet. But it is now time for us to pause, breathe, and relax. It is now time for us to open our minds to exploring new ways to navigate around healing within this lifetime. It is now time for us to enter a space free of judgment and only awareness for ourselves, circumstances, past, present, and future. It is now time for us to really become in tune with our inner child and understand what they may need in any moment. It is now time for us to collectively woosah and become more mindful as we indulge in receiving these tools that help us reprocess and reshape our brains and our minds for our future selves. All right, y'all. I hope that brought y'all some woosah, some tranquility, because it always does that for me. And I always have to like kind of gently wake you guys up because that's me. That's exactly how I get. But hi Judith. Uh
Hey,
thank
hey,
you for coming on to the show. Uh,
it's a pleasure. And I
this
loved your
is
exercise. I feel even more relaxed now. It's great.
I absolutely love doing that to set the tone of any episode just because it kind of just
Great idea.
any of the anxieties or any of the like stressors that I've had into the rest of like that from the previous portion of the day, they just immediately get lifted off of me and they reset
Fabulous.
you and they just recalibrates you. So I got some
Fabulous.
questions here.
Great.
The first one is, how has your passion led you here? Would you say you're passionate about mental health?
I am extremely passionate about mental health. And I wouldn't have written so many books if I wasn't. And it's not just because I want to make money, because actually
Mhm.
most books don't make money. Some
Yeah.
books do, but a lot of books don't. But I feel like I have the knowledge and I have the skills and I have the expertise. And so when I was asked to do this latest book by my, uh, one of my publishers, it's like I didn't even question it. Didn't even question it because
So,
I love mental
mhm,
health. I love emotional wellness. I love to give people tools. My specialty has always been with my clients as well as
mhm.
readers, practical tips, user-friendly tips
Yes.
that are life-changing
They
because
really
a,
are.
a lot of people, they don't know that just the quality of our thoughts can really determine
Mhm,
the quality of our lives. And I love to offer tools to actually help you do that. It's one thing to say, think
mhm.
positive. It's another
Yeah.
thing, how to think positive. What do you have to
Yeah.
do? Step 1, step 2, step 3. Have a
Yeah.
diary log or whatever. So yes, I'm passionate about it, as you can see.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, okay. You mentioned that you have the experience and the skills to do this work. Talk
Mhm.
to me a little bit about how long you've been in this field and been advocating and doing the things that you do.
Well, I've been in the field a long time because I'm
Mhm.
getting to on the older side now.
It's okay. It's
Uh,
age ain't nothing but a
I'm
number, and I'd be proud of that number.
yes, I know. I'm 70 years old and I am proud of it, and I'm happy to be here. Um,
Yes.
when I finished, I got a master's in clinical psychology.
Mhm.
And after that, I worked in various mental health settings. But
Mhm.
most of the time, I had a private practice in Pennsylvania. I'm since retired from that, and I do
Yeah.
some mental health coaching online. Uh, with previous clients, but also with other people who find
Yeah.
me on my website. And, but I've written 11 books, and
11.
it started when it's a lot, isn't it? But it's over 20 years. And it
Yeah.
started when I was doing continuing education
Mhm.
seminars. I would travel around
Mm.
the country for this mental health continuing ed
Oh.
company,
Yeah, yeah.
and they started publishing. And
Mhm.
so they asked me to write a book, and I sort of fell into it like I do so many things in my life, and it ended up working out really good.
I feel
So,
like it was
yeah,
just in perfect alignment for you to have like the seminars to be like, hey, we're going to go into publishing. So, yes, we want you to write a book. I mean, I feel like in a way, like, especially, I'm sure you were speaking at these seminars and you were saying, like, hey, here are some practical tips.
right,
I'm sure they were like, well, why don't we just have we need more. We need something tangible that we can actually like hold on to. And that
right.
just makes perfect sense.
Well, actually, how the evolution happened, and that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
a message that I impart to people. You just
Yeah.
never know where your path is going to lead, because even
Never.
though you make a wrong turn, which I have
Mm-hmm.
made many, um, it can still bring you to the right place.
Yeah.
Because the first job that I had, one of the first jobs I had out of graduate school,
Mm-hmm.
um, I made like, well, it was in the late 70s, like maybe like $5 an hour or something like that. It was like
Yeah.
so, even then it was so little.
Mm-hmm.
But I worked for this program that at a YWCA,
Mm-hmm.
and it was an assertiveness program that I learned to lead assertiveness classes. And I didn't
Wow.
know any of this from grad school at all. And that little job that was
Uh-huh.
15 hours a week to supplement my youth guidance job, that was my
Yeah.
regular job,
Uh-huh.
ended up starting me in speaking. So I
Wow.
never thought of being a speaker, but it's like, wow, I learned all these skills of how to
Yeah.
help people use I statements instead of you statements, and deal
I,
with their stress and manage anger.
yeah.
It's all life skills. So it's
So,
funny how you kind of like fall into choices. I just needed to,
mm-hmm.
I had a 25-hour a week job. I just needed 15 more hours a week to work 40 hours. And that
Yeah.
was like my second job out of grad school. And I saw it in the newspaper because back then it was no computers.
Wow.
And it was like 15
Yeah.
hours a week for a master's level clinician to teach assertiveness training. And I didn't even know what it was, but they
I was just
wanted,
about to
and
ask you
I
myself,
had
what
no
is
idea.
that?
Well, now I know,
Well, now
obviously,
you
and
know,
and
but
right, right, but now most people, like have heard of the term assertive, and
yeah,
seen
yeah.
it. But then I thought maybe this is like self-defense. Why would they need a
Yeah,
counselor for that?
yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so what assertiveness is communicating with tact and finesse, with
Wow.
kindness, and being authentic and honest without being overbearing and aggressive, and without
Mm.
being non-assertive and stuffing your feelings in. And that was
Mm.
life changing for me. That little job for 15 hours a week, it set me on a path of loving to speak. So when I would get
Wow.
the flyer in the mail for continuing ed, I thought
Uh-huh.
I could speak on that too, because I did
Oh,
workplace wellness. Uh,
wow.
I worked at workplace wellness seminars and
Mhm.
conferences. So I thought I could do that. And that ended me in another direction. And I
I
think
love this.
that, sometimes you don't plan on things. I know that
Yeah.
I'm passionate about the mental health field. So
Mhm.
that is like the only constant throughout
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
But it's really amazing how life can evolve. And even though, I had this little job with like basically very little income from it. Um,
Mhm.
in my struggling years, it turned out, wow, that really was when you connect the dots,
Yeah.
that was a great entry into my path.
Yeah,
And
and
I'm
you
very
can
grateful for it
yeah,
because
you
it's
can,
it's
like
it's worked out well for me.
well, yeah, because you can reflect on that. I think that that's so beautiful about life is that, like, even at where I'm at in my life right now, I find myself reflecting on things and I'm like, huh, that makes sense why I guess I'm on this certain path towards mental wellness and like helping everybody and healing and things like that. So I definitely agree with you on that. Like that's beautiful actually. We're gonna circle back to the assertiveness because I want to try something out. But um so I had well I guess this does fall in line. So I have a question for you here. How long or would you say that there is a time frame for certain tips and tools to become like routine and effective in a person's life? Or does it depend on that person's scenario and their situation?
I think it depends on a whole host, and I never
Mm.
like to measure success by an endpoint. Success is the
Mm.
journey. Success
Oh,
is you get a little bit better, you get a
yeah.
little bit more refined, you tweak a little bit, and I
Mhm.
never think of, okay, you either get it or you don't. No, it's like a
Oh,
journey. And
I love that.
sometimes
That
you
gives
might
oh.
go back
Yeah. Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
you think, and that would happen even with my clients is like I would bring out a worksheet that maybe they used a year ago and
Mhm.
they would be like, I can't believe I'm still going back to that. I said, this is a lifelong journey. And
Huh.
sometimes we need to get reminders. And that's why
Ooh.
I love practical tips in not only this book but in my other books too. That's all
Mhm.
my books is basically generally, very practical tips, a lot
Yeah.
of things that people can actually learn skills because you just don't learn it
Mhm.
and be done with it. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
learning a language. It takes a lot of time. Maybe you learned Pig Latin when you were younger. Maybe you
Mhm.
learned a language of a little bit of nonsense and irrational thinking. You
Mhm.
need to replace that language with
Ah.
new language and a new
Okay.
understanding, but it's not like it's just like that. And even though you might adopt a new language, you
Mhm.
still might have some of the old accent. The old
Yeah.
accent of looking
Yeah.
at things, it's just like someone coming to the United States from another country. And maybe
Mhm.
they came when they were 6 or 7 years old, and now they're, when they're 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they still have an accent. Why? Because their initial
Mm.
language still is part of their fabric.
Wow. That's such a beautiful way.
Thank
I
you.
got to sit with that for a second. Because I have also I've gone to therapy and I actually am an EMDR therapy. I always say it, I always get the lettering wrong. So I
EMDR, yeah.
yeah, so I'm in that therapy currently and I've been in it for the past like 2-3 years.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
when I first started therapy, trying to get to this point in your book where you were talking about it's a tip to eradicate the shoulds. It's interesting because my first therapist would tell me there are no shoulds or shouldn'ts here. Like that's how we would start the session.
Sure. Right.
And I would be like, okay. But it's like entering that space of like, hey, even if this old thought pattern does come up, let's reframe it, let's rework it, let's
Right.
think about it from these different lenses. So when you just said that, that's interesting because it made me think like, huh, that's just another way of basically saying like that's like you said, it's a part of your initial fabric.
Yeah, right. And you
Wow.
still have the board of directors in your mind and the
Yeah.
shoulds that you learned way long ago, even though that narrative might have just been Pig Latin, but they're
Yeah.
still there. But it's interesting. One of my tips,
Mhm.
and I have plenty of them um,
Mhm.
in the book and not in the book, is I would have in my office when I had a therapy office a should
Yeah.
jar. and because I used to do pottery, so I
Ooh,
actually engraved the word shoulds, and I
okay.
had a should jar, and I would have clients come in and have little scraps of paper of the shoulds they want to get rid of to put in the jar. And so they would
Really?
put the should in. Yeah, seriously. And I'll never forget, there was one of my clients, she came in and said, I need your should jar before we even start talking. So she
Mm,
opened the should jar. She had a few things she put in it. I said, okay, so what'd you put in there? And then she went into what she was
what it
struggling with that
was.
week with her shoulds. So having a should jar, and some of my clients actually had a should jar at home. Maybe they put the word should on a
Mhm.
jar or a box. And whenever they felt like the shoulds that they had in their mind were oppressing them
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and leading to what's called cognitive distortions, which is a
Yeah.
hallmark of CBT, they would
Mhm.
write the should and put it in a jar. Sometimes with a diary format, they would reframe it. I
Mm.
should be farther along in my life right now.
Yeah.
I wish I was further along in my life right now. One is a should, and another
Uh-huh.
one is a preference. When you stick to preferences, it's not so overbearing
Uh-huh.
and judgmental, like you screw up.
Yeah.
It's more a want, which is
Yeah.
fine. We could all
I love
want to
I
be
think that's
further along.
beautiful. I think that's a beautiful
Thank you.
way of reframing that because I deal with shoulds. I still deal with them. But mine has become more like, okay, if I think of a certain should, I'm like, okay, I have gratitude for this moment instead. Like I think my reframing has now shifted to just, okay, I'm being mindful. Like I'm acknowledging that should, but I don't have to what is the word that I'm thinking of? I don't have to give it like power over me. I don't have to let it control my day to day or whatever I was doing in that moment. It can just be like, yeah, I thought that, but or that's how someone used to think, or you know what I mean? Or because
Right.
more oftentimes than not, it's not usually me saying the should. It's usually someone else from my
Yep.
past, or it's a judge, or you know what I mean? It's something um that's not of me, and then I have to kind of recognize like, oh, I can acknowledge that exists, but I also have this tool handy to allow me to like, hey, let it go, confetti it and let it go. Like, think you can acknowledge it, just let it go though.
You
It gives
don't
me
have
a
to,
chance to breathe. Yeah.
yeah, you don't have to listen to it. You can watch it.
Yeah.
There's actually a term called cognitive diffusion, where you
Cognitive
diffuse
diffusion.
those. And that's actually part of ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, that uses a lot of CBT principles, but it also is
Whoa.
very heavy on mindfulness and acceptance. And cognitive fusion is one of the cornerstones of ACT. And I also have that in my book. And what that does is you watch your thoughts
Hmm.
without getting attached to them. So
I
you
love that.
diffuse it from your mind. So you look at them rather than from them. So instead of saying, I'm a loser,
Uh-huh.
you look at them. Oh, there I go again. I'm having the thought that I'm a loser. And maybe you will have that on a screen and
Uh-huh.
imagine that you're in the audience in a movie theater. And then
Wow.
maybe you go another 10 rows back and
Uh-huh.
you just visualize, yeah, that thought is there, but you're diffusing it from your mind. You're not believing it anymore.
Yeah,
You're
no.
watching it. You're observing. And that's really what you were just describing.
Why, yeah, that's why I'm kind of shocked. And that's the way.
There's a term
That's
for
why I'm
that,
kind of shocked. I
cognitive
didn't know.
diffusion.
I did
It
not know that existed. I didn't know it was a term, but yeah, I do that every
diffuse it
day.
from your mind. You could,
Wow.
like one of my favorite imageries
Mhm.
in that is thinking of your negative thoughts, your shoulds, whatever, on a
Yeah.
cloud. And
That's how
then you just
yeah.
watch it.
They
And
just pass through.
eventually they pass through. And the same
Wow.
thing, there's a common imagery in ACT
Mhm.
called leaves on a stream.
Leaves on
Put
a street.
each of your, just imagine sitting by a beautiful stream
Mhm.
and leaves are going on the stream, and each of those negative thoughts you put on a leaf and then you watch it as it slowly disappears.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Like, okay, that I don't know if you've ever gotten this reaction from these practical tips, but I'm gonna give you this reaction. The way you're describing this, like I'm such a visual person, but the way
Mhm.
you're
It
describing this,
helps.
it's helping me breathe. Like it's like breaking up
Mhm.
whatever anxieties, whatever I don't even know if it's anxiety, but it's like I can breathe easier after you're as you're describing this. Like maybe it's because I'm a super visual person, but I, that's what I'm getting from these tips that you're describing right now.
That is beautiful feedback, and I really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
I love your enthusiasm, and I love the way you express it, because a
Yeah.
lot of people, they love the visualizations, but
Mhm.
they have not expressed it to me in that way. So thank you for
Oh.
that,
Yeah, of
because that
course.
helps me know what's relevant to people. But I would say most people,
Uh-huh.
they they benefit from analogies. They benefit
Mm.
from metaphors.
Yeah.
So for example, I'll give you an example of a metaphor,
Yeah.
which is a commonly used one,
Mm.
even in self-help. So, it's not like I'm the only one that thought of it. But
Yeah.
when you're flying in a plane, the flight attendant says, put your mask on yourself before helping young children
Yes.
or anybody else.
Mhm.
So I think that's a great analogy for self-care,
It is.
because if you can't nurture yourself and help yourself, you're not going to be able to help anybody else.
Not at
And a
all.
lot of times people think, oh, I don't want to be selfish. I want to be selfless. Well, selfless people who don't nurture themselves and don't have good self care are
Mhm.
generally not as good for other people, because then they become codependent, and then they have a lot of strings attached, and there's a lot of other negative influences.
Yeah.
Truly, the best thing you can do for anybody is to work on yourself.
Yeah. That's the best
That's a
that
great
like
analogy. That's
it
a
is
great
a great
analogy.
analogy, and I've heard it so many times,
Yep.
and I always think about that, but there are times where, like, just earlier this week, I was like, I haven't been sleeping, so I've had, like, been tossing and turning, and, my doctor was like, "You can take these sleeping pills now if you need them, and da 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 da," and I was like, "I don't need them, I don't need them, I don't need them." But now I'm being honest with myself and I'm like, okay, no, I am sleep deprived. And if I am sleep deprived, guess what? Guess what suffers? Me, obviously. But not only me, but my
Absolutely.
business, my the time that I actually want to be and nurturing to myself and like have that self-care and all those things. I can't do that at when I'm burning at the edge. You know what I mean? I just can't.
Right.
I'm too
Right.
tired. And I'm saying I'm sleep deprived, but I'm not doing anything to change it. So why don't we do something to change it? And we'll be good from there.
Right.
It's I think what I've
It's a
come to
great
learn.
example.
Thank you. What I have come to learn about healing and just through the work that I have done on myself and the work that I've done with other people is that there's no finish line. It like you said, it's a lifelong journey. But I think when I originally was looking at healing or even therapy, I was like, okay, there's going to be a day. There's going to be a day. It's just going to be like that, and I'm not going to think about anything. But when you think about it from that lens of like, oh, this is the finish line that I have to cross. I can't. You're still being the critic. You're still being that judgmental person because we have slip ups. We're not perfect. We're human. So it's giving that self compassion. But if I were just constantly like, oh, I have to get to this finish line, I have to, kind of treat it like it's a deadline sort of thing and like put all that pressure, eventually you crack. At least I do. I'm being honest.
Absolutely. It's sort of like people who want to go on a diet. You
Yeah.
know, if I don't lose those 30 pounds, then I failed,
Mhm.
rather than every step along the way. So that what you're describing is a
Mhm.
fixed mindset. Like,
Yeah.
I have to reach that goal, versus a
Yeah.
growth mindset. A
Mhm.
growth mindset does not value yourself because of successes, and does not beat yourself up because of failures. You basically keep on revising and learning and
Mm.
growing.
I
And
love that.
actually, there's more and more research done lately, like in the last 10, 15 years,
Yeah.
that people with a growth mindset are generally much happier than people with a fixed mindset. So it
Yeah.
really relates to happiness because you don't define yourself by successes or failures. Because we
Mhm.
know a lot of we all know successful people who aren't
Yeah.
necessarily happy. So
Yeah.
things from the outside are not necessarily going to make you happy. I mean, obviously, we need some basics in our lives, um,
Yeah.
but the quality of our thoughts and our ability to be self-compassionate, to
Mhm.
brush ourselves off, and
There it
grow
is.
is really more of a determinant of how happy we're going to be.
Mm. That's wow. You just blew my mind. I finally found the
Thank you.
page, but you just blew my mind. I think that's interesting because like I said, I know the old mindset that I used to have, right? Like I know who my old self was and the negative thoughts that plagued me and all. I know that. And so it's interesting when you think about it from, oh yeah, that's I can see why, like, growing up in a dysfunctional environment where you didn't trust yourself, you didn't trust the people around you, and your feelings weren't safe, you know what I mean?
Right.
That's going to lead to negative thoughts. It's going to lead to
Yeah.
depression. It's going to lead to these things. And yes, that's sad, but it's also like you said, that growth mindset, and it's a remarkable thing to step into when you're like, I will accomplish this. And even if I don't accomplish it, that doesn't determine my self worth. It doesn't determine my identity either. Whether or not I accomplish this thing or not is not a oh my god, a determination or a determinant of my internal success or my self worth. It's just not.
Absolutely. I would constantly tell my clients, your self
Mm-hmm.
worth is never on the line. You're always worthy.
Oh,
You're
oh my
worthy
god.
that just like you were on day one. And when you
Wow.
think of yourself, I mean, actually, in the book, there's a
Mm-hmm.
visualization, imagining yourself as a child.
Yeah,
And
I do that
when
often.
did we get the idea that
Mm-hmm.
we are not worthy? We're no less worthy than we were the day we were born.
Mm.
And so often, too much crap happens and things
Yeah.
happen, and we have the self talk, and we forget that we are just as beautiful as when we were born,
Do
a
you
newborn
think
baby.
I love that? I love that. I love that visualization. But to your point, just to expand just a little bit, do you think that when we experience, or when those of us experience traumatic events or certain stress, that it causes us to view ourselves in a different lens from the way that we viewed our value before? Do you think it kind of it
I
shifts
think
that?
trauma,
Mhm.
there's varieties of trauma.
Yeah.
And trauma is trauma. And I would
Mhm.
have a lot of times clients saying, well, I know I don't have as bad as other people, so I shouldn't complain. I say, no, your trauma is your
Is
trauma.
your
It's not
trauma.
like you never compare yourself either good or bad with someone else, because
Yeah.
that is going to rob your life of joy. If you
Yeah.
constantly compare that, oh, they have better car, or they have better kids, or they have
Of
better
course,
life,
yeah.
and whatever. You don't want to do that. You only want to
No.
measure yourself of where you were yesterday and how much you're growing.
Exactly.
That's it. But to your question about trauma,
Mhm.
I think that trauma um, often gives people the erroneous notion that they're not good enough and they're not worthy. And
Yeah.
because they're not nurtured. But
Mhm.
in defense of the people who didn't know any better, they often have struggled with that themselves. So it's
Yeah.
not about blame. Like my
Yeah.
clients would say, oh, I don't want to keep on blaming my parents and this. I said, it's not about blame. It's about
Mhm.
understanding and insight. That's all it is.
Wow. Ooh.
And then you then focus on forgiveness. Forgive
Mhm.
people for not giving you what they never had to give.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
sometimes think they should have known better. They should have been able to give me something. Well,
That's an
maybe they
assumption.
did. That's an assumption. But,
Yeah,
you don't go to a hardware store expecting to buy milk.
that is true.
You don't expect, we often expect people to give us what we think we need and what maybe we do need,
Mhm.
but some people are not capable of that.
Yeah.
And I think part of wisdom and post traumatic growth over
Yes.
post traumatic stress
Uh-huh.
is forgiving not only yourself
Mhm.
for not knowing then what you know now,
Yeah.
but forgiving them, whoever they were in your past that has caused pain,
Mhm.
that I have in my 40 plus years of being a therapist and
Yeah.
coaching, I have never met one person who meant to be dysfunctional. Never.
Yeah.
Never met one person who ever thought that they were narcissistic, except if they weren't and then they thought they were. People who are narcissistic don't really think they are. So, you know, and it's usually the
Sorry,
people
I
who were like the victims.
yeah.
They're the ones that, I feel like I'm just like my mother or whatever.
But that
And
that's why I laugh. I'm laughing because I've had this conversation. I've
it's very
had this
common.
same
You're not alone.
I've had this same conversation with like several of my friends, but this is the to show the difference between the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. When I had the fixed mindset, that was when I had the spiral of like, oh my God, am I like that? Am I being narcissistic? Am I doing too much? Am I oversharing? Am I da 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 da? And it was simply because I didn't feel like, and this is real. I didn't feel safe enough to be
Right.
vulnerable and say, hey, I don't feel safe in this predicament, or I don't feel
Yep.
safe around this certain individual. Or if I did say that, I didn't feel like it would be valued and trusted. So I'm laughing because like I have had that same spiral, and I've had the same some people. They used to be like, Janae, you have empathy, and the fact that you're even asking me this is a
Right.
testament that you're
Right.
not.
Narcissistic people don't really care.
They don't
Right.
care. They don't
But
ask you.
but I don't want to paint
Yeah, no.
people who have narcissism as the bad guys,
Of course they're not.
because
No.
they're the hurting guys.
They
My
are.
rule of thumb is
Mhm.
that the amount of pain someone's in is the
Yeah.
amount of not of obnoxiousness they have. So if
Oof.
they're really difficult, it means that they also were in a lot of pain. They had a lot of anxiety. Maybe they just didn't recognize it. They couldn't own up to it. They
Mhm.
had to be something else, whatever. So when you shift from blame, and that's what CBT helps with, because it's
Yeah.
very empowering. Because, for example, just think of what I call the psychological ABCs. A is
Mm.
an act or an event. So let's say
Actor an event.
someone walks by you who you know well, doesn't say hello. The
Yeah.
C is the consequence, which is your behaviors
Consequence.
and your
Yeah.
feelings. You feel down, and maybe you'll snub them the next time.
Mhm.
A didn't really cause C. There's
Nope.
something in the middle that caused the C. And
Mhm.
that is your belief, your perception. If you
Mm.
have, so that's why you're not a victim of anyone, because you can change your perceptions. You identify
Yeah,
them
yeah.
and you decide and realize he didn't make me upset. I was upset because I thought he doesn't like me anymore. But
Mhm.
if you thought, oh, wow, he's so preoccupied in his own life, he didn't even see me, ha ha,
Mhm.
you would be
Yeah.
amused. And then maybe
Yeah,
you
you
would
would
be more
laugh.
empathetic. If
Mhm.
you thought, oh, everybody, he hates me, everybody hates me, you're going to be
Mhm.
depressed. And then you're going to go
Yeah.
home and eat a row of Oreos or something like that. So, depending on how you interpret it, is
Mhm.
going to, but so many times people go to A to C and they say, she stresses me out. He makes me so mad. Guess what? Now we're not talking about abuse here, in
Yeah.
criminal
Yeah,
behavior.
yeah. No, no,
Uh,
no. I got you.
right,
I got
right.
you.
No one can actually change the neurons in your brain.
But you.
So no one, yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how you rephrase it, that's cognitive restructuring.
So,
Rephrasing is for
mhm,
CBT, which would
mhm,
be I, I, let's say you think, he must be mad at me. That's why he
mhm.
didn't say anything.
Yeah,
Say
yeah.
that's the cognitive distortion of jumping to conclusions and
Okay.
thinking something is a fact when it's just your fear
It's
and
yeah.
your anxiety or
Uh-huh.
your nervousness.
Yeah.
And how could I restructure it? I feel bad that he didn't say anything to me. And I will ask him next time I see him if there is something
Mm.
up or did he just not notice me? So you
Mhm.
can already like reframe rather than he
Yeah.
must hate me now or he must be mad at
Yeah.
me. Maybe it
Yeah.
was something I said.
It's interesting how it's so powerful, those reframes, but it's very, what
Very.
I find the most interesting is how, like, it can be something so simple, like just a simple thought of like, oh, this is like, it's a projection almost of like, oh, this is what must be true. But then when you actually dissect that perception, that projection a little bit deeper, and you
Right.
realize, oh, expand it a little bit more. It ain't got nothing to do with me. It ain't got nothing to do with me. That person is probably just living their life. They're not thinking about me, and and that's when you can find the humor in it. You, like you said, but I think that that is so fascinating. So you talked about. So I'm going back to the strategies to eradicate the shoulds. Like, I think that the should jar is awesome, but in one of these implementing skilled bullet points, you have a thing here that says write your argument down. So
What's your what?
write your argument down. I'm going to read it
Oh,
out.
okay. Right. Okay.
If you are plagued by a persistent by persistent shoulds, write out why you deserve not to hold on to them and why they are not really true.
Yeah. Right.
Identify where they came from and question the validity of the people or experiences that gave you
Right.
these unhealthy messages and let go of what you do not agree with.
That's great.
That's powerful. That's
Yeah.
great. I'm going to start
That's
doing
like
that instead of
That's like giving giving up the pig Latin and realizing
wow.
I don't understand it because that's like pig Latin. Let
Yeah.
me let me have like a more normal, healthy language.
Mhm. Wow. So what do you say to, let's say, like, what do you say in those moments when you do have those old behaviors that want to, and you don't act on them but you still know that you could act on them? Is that another like cloud scenario type of thing, or what would that be?
I think that what comes to my mind is the
Mhm.
skill of assertiveness. Now we're going to go back
Mhm.
to what we talked about assertiveness.
Okay.
Assertiveness isn't only being assertive to other people, it's
Okay.
having healthy self-talk, assertive self-talk. A lot
Wow.
of times we have aggressive self talk. I'm so
Mm.
stupid I did that. I
Mhm.
shouldn't have done that, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
aggressive. That's rude to yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I wish I didn't do that. Fine. So you can change that self talk instead of, oh, I should have known
Oh.
better. I wish I did know better. And
Mhm.
I can identify reasons why I wasn't thinking as clearly. And I'm so glad I
Mm.
recognized it. So let's say in your mind, he drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Then you talk assertively to yourself and
Mhm.
say, now that's kind of aggressive because I'm blaming him for my feelings that I
Yeah.
don't like. So
Mhm.
I am really upset with him when he says things like blank. So you do
Mm.
factual statements that are assertive. I statements. I don't like that. I don't feel comfortable rather than he
Mhm.
shouldn't have done that. So you become a victor instead of a victim.
Mm.
You
That's
become
ooh,
powerful over your life
I love
because you
that.
have power over your thoughts.
You
Nobody
do.
owns it. But a lot of
Yeah.
times people, oh, the snow stresses me out. Snow can't stress you out. How about if you're a skier or you're a little kid and you have a snow day from school? That doesn't stress. So it's not a no brainer that snow stresses.
Mhm.
Well, I live in Florida. Snow actually does stress me out, but whatever, regardless.
I mean, I'm in Ohio, so snow does stress me out, but it's interesting cuz I was going to ask, So I personally deal with like a little bit of anxiety around driving. And
Mhm.
I was curious, like, what would be a practical tip for somebody who is comfortable driving in certain conditions, but not comfortable during other conditions because it brings up the time where they shouldn't have been driving, to put it
Okay.
simply.
Okay. So I think that you can like write down, your
Mm,
fears of
okay.
what, is concerning you about driving.
Okay.
And are they fact or fiction? You know, what are you saying to yourself? What are the quality of your thoughts? And so by writing it down, you will be able to better decide, is this healthy or irrational thinking? So if you think, you know, it would be terrible if I,
Mhm.
uh, you know, didn't, wasn't, slipped on the ice or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be very difficult
Yeah.
and hopefully, but sometimes people over catastrophize or they get into like almost a panic attack, because they
Yep.
are so afraid. And usually their thoughts, once it becomes panicky, are not rational at all.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
the other thing is to realize I'm glad I have this nervousness because it's going to make me a lot more careful in driving. I'll be a lot
Mm.
more aware and I'll be a lot more safer because I am not as arrogant. So, but by writing things down, you can identify, are there cognitive distortions in there? Is there
Mhm.
all or nothing thinking? I couldn't stand it if I, go and, drive in the ice and slip on the ice. Well, it would be unfortunate, but I know how steps I can take to minimize that risk.
Mm.
So you
Oh.
it's almost like a gaslight on the car. You kind
Uh-huh.
of need a sign sometime that, you need to fill up with gas.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe it's a sign that, okay, I think I need to be more mindful when I'm driving, more
Mhm.
cautious, more careful, because I do have that nervous. That could be your guide. That could help you.
Mm. Yeah, cuz
Often
sometimes
people
I
who get in accidents are not so worried about them. They
yeah,
go too fast or they get more careless. Maybe that's helping keep you safe.
I've gotten into a few, and recently I've had some loss surrounding accidents, so it has just kind of whatever level it was at, it kind of just and
Absolutely.
and so now
So
I'm
there's
like,
there's trauma. There's trauma
yeah,
in there.
a
Yeah,
little bit,
there's
yeah.
trauma. Yeah.
So that's why it's like I and then I see where you're saying, oh, is there cognitive distortion? There's a little bit of cognitive distortion because I find myself being like, oh, well, it's going to be like a be all end all situation, and that I could, oh, I'll get in an accident and this will happen, and like, and then just it kind of just increases from there. So I will try that. I will try that. That's why I wrote that down. I was listening to you. I was writing it down because I want to try
Yeah,
that. I
good.
want to practice
Absolutely.
that for
Yeah.
sure. Because I
Look
think,
and see what the
yeah.
quality of your thoughts are. Just
Mhm.
stream of consciousness, some of the things that makes me nervous, some of the things that I'm thinking about. I couldn't
Mhm.
stand it if I, did something wrong or if I
Yeah.
got in an accident, it would probably be fatal this time or whatever. Whatever you think of
Mhm.
that will rise you into a panic. I
Mhm.
remember I saw a woman once and she was absolutely terrified to drive because she had an accident and she
Yeah.
was absolutely terrified. And that's really what we did. I said, okay, what goes through your mind? And I would
Mhm.
write down, she just kept on saying different things. And
Saying
then we
different
would look
things.
at those thoughts and
Uh-huh.
she said, yeah, that's not really very healthy thinking. That's not rational. That's not, and
Mm.
it helped her get a handle on it. Because
I
so
like
often
that.
we have what's called ants,
Yes, that was my
automatic,
next question for you.
negative. Oh, really? Wow.
Yes.
We're in sync, sister. thoughts.
Hold on to the nuts, right? Isn't that what it is? So we don't
Right.
want the
So
ants, but we want the nuts, right?
we don't want either ones. Negative
Oh.
unconscious thoughts. It's just, that's one of the tips. Is
Oh.
some people call them nuts because it makes you nuts.
Oh, okay.
Negative
We don't want either one.
unconscious thoughts. We don't want either one, no. Or
Okay.
so eliminate the nuts and eliminate the ants. And
Mm.
just by empowering yourself and identifying your thoughts,
Mhm.
it can help you change your feelings. You can't say to yourself, "Oh,
Wow.
stop feeling sad."
Yeah,
But
no.
you can change the thought that makes you feel sad. If you
Yeah.
say, I'll never get my life together. First thing, that's fortune telling, all or nothing thinking,
Mhm.
right? Jumping to conclusions, a lot of
Yeah.
cognitive distortions just in that.
Yeah.
So if you that would be an example of a nut or an
Mhm.
ant, right?
Yeah.
And then you can say, how can I rephrase that? I am afraid that I won't be as healthy as I wish I could be.
Mm.
And I will try very hard
You
to
know,
achieve that.
I'm noticing something here. I don't know if you're doing this on purpose, but I'm noticing that when you shift to like the growth mindset and you're shifting from the permanent thinking and you're actually just reframing, you're going to a vulnerable space. And I don't know if you're doing that on purpose, but I feel a difference in you saying I am afraid of being healthier than I am now, or I am afraid. Like
I know.
it's there's a level of vulnerability within that shift, but it's still that authenticity too. Like it's power. It's power
It's
there.
it's it I think what I noticed when I
Mm-hmm.
shifted to a healthier thought, I
Yeah.
spoke more gently.
Yeah. You
I
do
was
speak
more
gently. It's it's,
I
it's
was more
softer.
compassionate.
Yeah.
I was more
Yeah.
self-compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of self-compassion, it used to be thought by a lot of people, including
Mm-hmm.
me, that success determines your happiness or things from the outside. If have this or,
Mm-hmm.
make something of yourself or whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, people who are most self-compassionate are generally much happier people than people who are more achieving than they are.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily give you happiness.
No.
Self-compassion and compassion for others
Yeah.
is really
It's
vital
rich.
for an emotionally healthy life.
Yeah.
And always choose with, there's people you get in arguments with.
Mm-hmm.
Ask yourself, would I rather be kind or right? Because a lot
Mm.
of times people want to prove they're right,
Mm-hmm.
and it really doesn't matter. Being right is overrated.
Yep. A
Being
lot of
kind is the
yeah.
important thing.
A lot of relationships I mean, even in my personal life, I've seen them destroyed simply because someone wants to be right. And a lot of the time, to being honest, it could have been me, and it even
Mhm.
could be me still now,
Yeah.
but not every single time. And I think just something that I feel like my warriors and myself probably struggle with is like, especially because with me, we're talking about coming from an abusive, dysfunctional, upbringing. And so that dynamic is never going to be like, okay, I can just passively say yes, like enjoying everything, because that's just not safe, right? But it's different if you're looking at it from other situations. And I think there's a lot of times where people that are involved in abusive situations where the bully, so to speak, or the abuser or whatever, is trying to make it seem like the person that is being harmed wants to be right about everything, but really they just want to be seen. They just want to be, a little, just have that self-compassion for the person that is being harmed. That's where that comes from. And so I see what you're saying about that. I just wanted to kind of make that as an outlier a little bit, because I feel like people would be like, oh, well, okay, I don't always have to be right. So I can't, if, I just kind of saw that going that way. So just wanted to clarify. This does not mean that you may not be wrong, or that this does not mean that you may be
No,
wrong about
of course not.
the abuse that you've experienced and things like that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, when I talk about being kind rather than
Mhm.
being right, I
Yeah.
think it's more that the more you're forgiving of other people for not being
Yeah.
who you hope they would be,
Yeah.
and that's different than how they should have been.
Yep.
Right.
That is.
Because, yeah,
That's a
of course,
tough
they
one.
shouldn't have been abusive. Yes. I
That's
mean,
a
we could say
that's
that
a
because that's
yeah.
criminal,
Mhm.
that's abusive behavior.
Yeah.
They should have been. But
Mhm.
a lot of people grow up with a lot of trauma that have not been a victim of criminal abuse. There's a lot of varieties of dysfunction.
Yeah.
And so some of it's not as clear cut,
Yeah,
but
I know.
it's very good to be able to use the words that are assertive in your own
Yeah.
self talk, in
Yeah.
I statements. I wish this was different rather
Mhm.
than it should have been different.
Yeah.
Because when
It's
you
aggressive when you
forgive,
yeah,
when you
before.
forgive people for
Mhm.
not being who you had hoped, then you give up all expectations and judgments, even for yourself too.
Yeah, you free
So it's
yourself.
very freeing. Yes.
It is. It's
Yes.
very freeing, and I think that if I could say, I think that might be the first step in your self-growth. I mean, it takes a while to be like, "Okay, I have forgiven them." It does take it that takes time, but when you acknowledge that that is where you have to go within your healing, it's kind of that's how you become free to be like we just said, it's very freeing. So I think that this is giving me a lot to think about. I mean, not that I haven't done the work, it's just making me like reflect. And I journal all the
Well,
time.
you keep
So
on going back and forth.
it's just
The
it's
healing process
yeah.
goes back and forth,
Mhm.
to denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. That's like the model of healing and the model
Yeah.
of grieving. You go back and forth, and then that you go
Yeah.
towards acceptance. Um, a lot of people talking about forgiveness. Uh,
Mhm.
I remember one particular client that I have who grew up in a very abusive household. She kept on thinking, even though she knew differently, cerebrally, that if she forgave, it would condone the actions.
That's
And
what I think.
so she never was able to be free of them, even though she physically distanced herself from her family of origin. She
Whoa.
was constantly under their thumb because she could not accept that forgiving them would be a gift to herself. She
Yeah.
never, she wasn't ready to do that. And unfortunately, she had a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression because she was holding on to that anger and negativity because she did not condone. And you know what? Forgiving has nothing to do with condoning. It's
Yeah.
letting go of the expectation that that your past would have been different.
Oh man, hold on. Yep. You done did it, Judith. Yeah. I knew that was coming, but it's something that I have actively been working on in my life. And I'll say this, I have forgiven a good majority of the people that have caused me harm, but presently there are things that do still come up that make you kind of, or that make me, or cause me, because not make, nobody can make me do anything, cause me to
They
feel
trigger you,
as if,
trigger you.
yeah, they trigger me, and it causes me to feel um as though what I went through didn't didn't necessarily matter, because it happened within my family, so I see like my family members will like hang out with people that cause me harm, and it's like, oh, you guys are okay. It's almost like a perception that I have is like, oh, if you hang out with this person, then you're okay with what they did, because never got justice, never, nothing was ever done to where I felt protected. And so that's why it went on for such a long time. And I'm 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 not gonna say I'm 100% okay now, but I have reprocessed it from the lens of like, you have to accept that this is what happened, because that was the hardest part for me, was accepting that the trauma even happened to me in the first place. Something that my family had instilled in me from a very young age was that this family is our family, and what happens in this family cannot be discussed outside this home.
Oh, that's
So
that's really a shame. But that's
yeah,
a role that they had
yeah,
to, you know, to kind of stay within societal standards.
yeah,
But the problem is that some things, if they are criminal, abusive, um, are not okay, and
yeah.
that's like a deal breaker. But
No, I get
you
it.
you
And
can, yeah.
I had to wrap my mind around that. Just because, you know, usually my family is okay with sweeping things under the rug and, keeping up appearances and things like that, I had to like have a heart to heart with myself, and I was like, look, my family is dying via narcissism. And I don't want to say, that's not to say that everybody has narcissism in my family. It's just that they more so care about the appearances and the upkeep of societal standards than they do care about the emotional and physical and mental well-being of uh those that are a part of the family. And that's just the honest truth. It's sad, but it's a fact. And it's a
You
fact that I experienced, so.
you also are a very sensitive,
Mhm.
deep thinker,
Mhm.
and a lot of people aren't. And
I
so
know. I've learned.
so people don't necessarily think like you in your
No, they
family.
don't.
And so
They don't.
to them, it's like, what's her problem? Why not? Whatever.
Mhm.
That was in the past, whatever. However their rationale
Yeah.
is. It's not a matter of right
Yeah.
or wrong. It's a matter of insensitivity and a
Yep.
matter of shallowness, that they don't really get it. They don't really understand it.
Yeah.
And
And it is
I've
a sad thing, but yeah. Go
it's
ahead. Sorry,
it's
I'm not trying to cut you off.
it is. No, 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 you didn't. No, that's good. It is sad. It is sad because you end up not having the support that you need on your journey. But
Yeah.
again, you can't get milk from a hardware store. If
Nope.
people don't
You
have it,
can't.
they
Then they.
people it often astounds me how some people don't look very deeply into things, and they'd rather
Yeah.
just sweep things under the rug because
Yeah.
they don't want to recognize their own pain.
No, they don't.
And,
You know what's.
they would say, hey, don't worry about it, you know,
Mhm. You know
but
what's
easier said
interesting?
than done.
It is a lot easier said than done. But I'm excited about what I'm about to say next, because it's a little nugget for y'all. So, as you guys know, I have my book coming out very soon.
Oh, wow.
But there is
Great.
a little nugget that I really think needs to be in this episode. So, throughout my book, I talk about, healing, and I talk about my journey and all that. But there's a quote that I often say, that there's life after trauma if you want it, right? And there's power in that if. But there's another version of that I've rephrased this quote in my life a lot to get me through some things. But most recently, I have said it to this extent. I've said people cannot meet you where they have yet to go. They can only,
Nice.
like, thank you.
Very nice.
They can only be with you at the level in which they know themselves. So
Absolutely.
if they refuse to do the work, as Judith and I have been saying, if they refuse to do the work for themselves and get to know themselves deeply and intimately, that's on them. It's not on you. And so you may be the person that's more deeply in tune with their emotions and their thoughts and things like that. And that person may just be and not harshly saying this, I just don't know how else to say this. They may lack that depth that you have, and you have to find peace within yourself to understand, like, it's like talking to a brick wall at some point, because you can't, like you said, you ain't gonna go to the hardware store and get milk, okay? Like, I don't know, like, there's it's just, if they don't want to go there, or if they have yet to go there themselves, you're gonna find that you're having conversations in this way. Like, it's just never ending.
It,
It's, yeah.
it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability to
Yes.
become more authentic like that. And a lot
Yeah.
of people, it's not that they don't want to go there, it's
Mm-hmm.
that like like they have no roadmap. There's no clue.
Yeah.
They don't know
Mm-hmm.
about
They don't
110
know how.
CBT tips and tools. They don't
Yeah.
know, they don't think, me, I don't need, self-help books. I don't need
Yeah.
therapy. I don't need any of that. So, it's not like there's a well-charted path that they understand.
Yeah.
To them, it would be, oh, that would mean I'm wrong or I'm weak, or if I
Yeah.
ask for help or if I get a self-help book. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like a choice as mad, although we might see it as that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's like, you know, it's like someone learning a new language. Like, why would I need to learn that?
Mm-hmm.
I already speak English, like
It's it's
it's
it's
a
a level.
cluelessness.
Yeah, but it's almost, that saying, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
It's almost exactly like that. It is the physical embodiment of that phrase, because I've seen moments where they're like, "Oh, well, they ask me, like, what do I do?" Right? And I tell them what I do, and then they're like, it's just like a blank place, because they're like, "What?" like, huh? So
They can't relate to it.
yeah, they can't relate, and it's not because they don't want to. They just simply, a lot of people, what I'm also learning, is that we all have different capacities. And again, it's the level of where we I don't want to say decide, but it's the level in which we, no, not decide. No, oh my god. We can reach within ourselves. That's the only way I can say it, right? It's whether or not we're aware. That awareness has to be there first. And if that awareness isn't there, it's because I can't make someone go to therapy just because I want them to go to therapy. That's not how healing works. I'm,
Right.
so they have to want to go on their own. A narcissist person does not change unless they want to change, right? So, and that's just an example. I'm just saying, people will not change unless they want to. You cannot exert your will on others to get them to change. It just doesn't happen.
Right. But let's
So,
say people want to change,
mm-hmm.
but they like don't have any roadmap. This is before
Yeah.
GPS. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know how to go. You have the big Grand
Mm-hmm.
McNally Atlas and it's like you're
Mm-hmm.
point. It's hard to figure it out.
Yeah,
And
it is.
that's why books like mine, and there's
I was
plenty
gonna
of
say,
them.
books like
Mine,
yours, podcasts
mine
like
is
mine.
exactly, that helps
Yeah.
people,
Yeah,
but they
yeah.
have to be receptive to it and
Yeah.
be in a place where they can say, yeah, I really could use that. But
Mm-hmm.
most people aren't
Aren't.
really as
Mm-hmm.
psychologically oriented to that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
some people are more stuck in their own stages of grieving where maybe denial is where they stay.
Yeah.
They
And
deny that
yeah.
they even have an issue. It's
Yeah.
everybody else who's
And
making you feel that way.
that's what I was about to say. When you come up to face those type of individuals who are just constantly set on being in that denial period, you have to be able to acknowledge for yourself when it's time for you to walk away, because you're going to do more damage to yourself trying to, hey, I'm trying to help you, I'm trying to help you. It's just not going to work unless they are willing to
Some
take that
people don't
step.
want your help.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. That's exactly, but I'm trying to say it nicely. Some people don't want our help. Some people just don't want to.
No,
No, some
nope,
people just don't
sorry,
want it. Some people just
not
don't want
welcome.
it. Oh my
That's
gosh,
true.
Judith, I'm so happy that you came and we
I loved our
talked.
conversation. You are fabulous.
Thank you.
You're a wonderful host, and you are have great energy. And Really enjoy talking to you. You're
I
fabulous.
enjoyed talking to you too. This was like leading up to this, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. And then I got your book and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna probably print off this because I don't want to write in it, but but like I'm probably gonna print off some pages and do these tips and things. But I before we get off, I did have one question for you. Because you talked about your tips, right? And we talked about your passions and everything. But which tip or practice is your favorite? Is out of all of them. It's 110. Do you have a favorite?
I always liked the emotional wellness kits, like a stress kit
Oh.
or an anger management kit or a, don't do drugs kit or whatever. Like any kit that you need. And
Mhm.
I like to use metaphors, and you assemble like a toolbox for yourself. So you might have like a box or a can or whatever. Let's say you put it in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Sometimes my clients had done that, and their kids helped them.
Uh-huh.
And they would put in like an eraser. It's okay to make mistakes. So tangible
Ooh,
metaphors for
I like
things that we
that.
want to keep in mind. That's always been and they're in each of my books, some sort of metaphorical toolkit
Mm.
for whatever you want to work on. I call it, like maybe a stress management kit, but
Mhm.
if you're working on, anger
Mhm.
management toolkit. So what else would be? How about like an elastic band? It shows us the importance of having enough stress that you have some tension on the band because you want to feel
Oh.
engaged and committed,
Yeah.
but you don't want to feel too much that you're going to snap and too little that you're going to be
Mm.
limp. So an elastic band
Wow.
shows how important it is to embrace stress. So that would be in there. How
That's
about
amazing.
a Hershey kiss or a hug? The hugs and
Uh-huh.
kisses. I'm giving
Yeah,
Hershey a plug here, but I love that.
yeah, yeah.
And often at the end of uh, my trainings and my speaking in
Mhm.
live audiences, I would pass out Hershey Kisses. And everybody takes a few
Mhm.
and they keep one for themselves because self love is very important. But
Yeah.
they give to one or two or three, depending on how many Hershey Kisses they have,
Yeah, they
other
grab, yeah.
people. I appreciate you because a lot of these times, like when I would do
Oh,
workplace wellness seminars, there are people who knew each other, either at the
yeah.
workplace or whatever, or they would come with other people. So
Uh-huh.
but something specific. I am grateful when you said that comment that helped me see things in a different perspective.
Wow.
I enjoy your sense of humor, or I've enjoyed working with you, whatever. Express
Yeah.
positivity. So, like, that could be in the stress kit, or that could be in the kindness kit, whatever you want
Wow.
to label it as. But, just a Hershey kiss could be very symbolic.
I like having so you know what? I have my own tips and tools and things that I do for like my self-care routine, like especially like to pour back into myself. But one of them recently, I have taken a step back from social media because it was just too much. It just became very distracting. But I found that like journaling for me is still a number one favorite of mine.
Great.
Cuz it's like mind dumping, you know. But also like something tangible, like I have a well, I don't even know. Oh, it's on the floor. Hold on. I have a weighted thing, like a weighted it just kind of like rests on my shoulders to kind of alleviate the stress. So I have that, and I
Cool.
love reading. But I love I love these tips. I had some tips of yours that I wrote down that I'm definitely gonna try out. Especially the should jar. I'm gonna definitely try that. But I had tip 16, tip 26, tip 34, tip 40, tip 30,
Wow.
and tip 24. I liked all of those, mainly.
I don't remember which tip is what, but I'll look after it.
I was gonna look now, but I don't know if I find them in enough time. But I'm
Well, I
honestly,
can look at the table of contents.
yeah.
Tip 16 is
Be a fact checker. Get rid of the ants and crack the nuts.
Right,
And that's
exactly.
literally what we
And
talked
then
about.
26
Uh-huh.
was thinking in temporary, not permanent ways. So that's
Yes.
really important. Like
Mhm.
there's a key word in that. A permanent is, I'm really bad at this.
Mm.
Temporary is up until now, I've
Mhm.
had difficulty with this. Up until now.
Up until
So
now.
up until now, I actually went to a seminar once, a
Mhm.
continuing ed seminar, and basically the whole seminar was
Mhm.
about up until now.
Wow.
Yeah, that's all basically well, that was his message.
Mm.
That's one of my tips, and that's one of the things I talk about. That was basically his message. Temporary thinking
Mhm.
replaces permanent thinking up until now.
I
And
like
just
that.
think of that. I'm too sensitive. Up until now, I've had a problem with being so sensitive that sometimes it hurts. That's
Mm.
temporary thinking. Permanent thinking is this is my identity and that's it.
It's that is that the same thing as like all or nothing thinking, or is that different?
That would be an example. That would be an example
Ah.
of all or
Okay.
nothing thinking. That is it's like temporary versus permanent thinking is absolutely all or nothing thinking that's made more temporary. It's an example of that.
Ah, I like
Yeah.
that. I like that. And then I had, what did I say? Oh, we tip 20. Was that tip 26? I think that was.
That was 26. You're just looking at the table of
Okay.
contents.
I am. Oh, where's tip 34? Tip
34 is using a,
34.
oh, this is great. That's actually one of the best tips, I think.
Yeah.
Using
How
a
do you
cognitive distortion diary to
how do you
manage
do that?
anxiety.
How do you
Well,
do that?
so identify first thing I have a list of all like common cognitive distortions such
Okay.
as their cognitive distortions are ways of faulty thinking that
Okay.
lead to depression, anxiety, and other problems, low
Gotcha.
self-esteem. So cognitive distortion example would be labeling. I'm a loser.
Mm,
Okay.
gotcha.
Or
Labeling.
he's a loser. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I'm stupid, whatever.
Things like that.
Shooting on yourself. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Fortune telling. I'm always going to be that way.
mm.
All or nothing thinking. Use it. Oh, he never, he never understands me. Well, maybe
Mm.
99 out of 100 times he doesn't, but at one time, then you can't say never anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
Gotcha.
that would be an example. Um, there is, jumping to conclusions. He didn't say
Mm.
anything to me. He must be mad at me.
Gotcha.
So those are examples, and then there's other cognitive distortions. So I list in
Mhm.
that tip
Mhm.
all the cognitive distortions, and then you have a diary. You have a problematic thought,
Mhm.
and you pick what kind of distortion. In one sentence, there could be two or three types of distortions, and
Mhm.
what it does is helps you detach from that
Mm.
thought, defuse it from your head,
Like,
and analyze it.
oh, I like
And
that.
yep, and then you replace it with
Mhm.
a healthier thought.
Okay.
But you need to identify the distortions to be able to be
First.
objective about it. Because a lot of times
Ah.
people do believe that they really will never get their life together, or I'll never find someone
Mhm.
to marry, or I'll be alone the rest of my life, or something like that. That's a lot
Yeah.
of extreme dramatic thinking, and that's not
Yeah.
really factual.
Yeah. It's more irrational thinking, which
It's dramatic.
mm,
Dramatic. So I would
that
say
makes
to my
sense.
clients,
Dramatic.
keep
Mm.
your drama to the stage. Why don't you try out for a local theater group? Keep the
uh-huh.
drama on the stage, not in your life.
I love that. Okay, so tip that was tip 34. I'm gonna go back to that one. Tip 40. Where we at? Oh, well, we already eliminate the ants and crack the nuts. We
Okay,
did
we
that
talked about that.
one
Yep.
again.
Right.
Tip
Boy, we're getting right through
30.
that book. That's great.
I know. Oh, trade in your perfectionistic words. I probably couldn't even be heard. Trade in your perfectionistic words. So
Right.
is that yeah.
So the perfectionist words is
Mhm.
this has to happen. That's
Mm.
has to is a definite. I
Okay.
wish it would happen. I will do whatever I can to make it happen.
Ah.
So trade in the perfectionistic words, or I should. The shoulds are a big part of the perfectionistic word bank.
They are,
Shoulds.
for
I
sure.
should be smarter. I
Yeah.
should be less sensitive.
Mhm.
I wish I was. So you trade those rigid, fixed, perfectionistic words.
I love that. I'm definitely working on that for sure. And I think we might have already talked about tip 24, but let me see.
Yeah, that one I
Oh,
think
yep.
we just did. Yep.
Yep, we did. I love
Awesome.
that.
You are
I got
just ripping through that book. This is
I
great.
am I am
I
ripping through
love
this
it.
book.
I love it.
I am excited for
I
this. I
love it.
cannot wait to, yeah, but best believe I'm gonna be, so this is the book, guys. This is the book. 110 CBT tips and tools. And just for the record, I don't know if
Thank you
I
so
think we
much.
said this, cognitive behavioral therapy is what CBT stands for, just so y'all know.
Yep.
But this has been Queen J with the Let's Get Uncomfortable podcast. As always, you can find me and on YouTube at Let's Get Uncomfortable Pod. You can find me on Instagram at Let's Get Uncomfortable Pod and my personal page at _ officially Queen J. And Judith Belmont, you can shout out your socials and your links, and I will put it in the thingies.
Absolutely will. I'll tell you right now. Well, Belmont Wellness is my
Mm-hmm.
website, and you can go on my Amazon author page and just click on my name, and it comes up with
Mm-hmm.
my author page. So those are two, LinkedIn and that. Unfortunately, my Facebook page was stolen. It was
Oh.
taken from me, and so now it's all spam. So I had
Mm.
185,000 followers, and now someone tricked me. I thought I was
Oh
speaking.
no.
I thought they were preparing me to speak to
Speak and
someone,
stuff.
and they
Yeah.
ended up stealing my page
Oh, I'm
because
so sorry.
yeah. But anyway, so don't look
Are
at
you on
Facebook,
are you
but
on
LinkedIn,
Instagram? Mm-hmm.
no, I'm not on Instagram, but
Okay.
I was
So
on Facebook, but now I'm not because they stole it. And so I would say LinkedIn is my best place right now in my website.
LinkedIn,
Yeah.
LinkedIn, Amazon, and your website.
Yes, that's the best
Um,
way.
all right. We will be in touch, and I am so excited. As
Thank you so
always,
much. You're
thank you for seeing
fabulous.
and hearing me. Peace.
Thank you.